Hello and welcome back to another episode of our Sustainability Asia video series. In this series, we talk to colleagues and clients about sustainability and what it means for business. Today, I'm really delighted to be joined by some colleagues from our Australian offices. Gavin Scott is a partner in Brisbane and Paul Lingard, a partner in Perth. And Gavin and Paul have been leading a team which has been advising a consortium behind the world's largest green hydrogen project, the Western Green Energy Hub. Gentlemen, welcome. Paul, I'll start with you if that's okay. Could you briefly describe the project and its enormous scope?
Yeah, certainly. And I think for your for the viewers, I'm just going to go back a little step and just explain broadly what it is. What the project is a very large scale green hydrogen project. So for those of you who don't know, green hydrogen is effectively the production of hydrogen from renewable resources, whether it be wind, solar, hydro, or the like. That gets converted into hydrogen, which is, in a similar way as LNG, just a transportable energy source. Now, a lot of the projects, for various reasons, can also be referred to as green ammonia projects, because then the hydrogen is converted into ammonia. And there's various reasons for doing that I won't bore everyone with, nor pretend to talk about, given I'm a mere lawyer. So what makes this project really interesting, and Gavin will talk about another interesting feature, is its scale. It's 50 gigawatts, it's 15,000 square kilometres, it's just massive. One of the luxuries we have in Australia is not only a huge amount of land that we can undertake these projects on, but actually also fantastic climate conditions. So wind and sun that works well together, in the sense that windy sites overnight, sunny sites during the day, which effectively allows you to maximize the production of hydrogen and ammonia off the site. And with that, you can then create this mass scale project, which allows you to export vast amounts of renewable energy to various locations in the world. Essentially, the general thought is that it will follow the same trade flows as LNG does in many ways, which is large energy consuming countries such as Japan and Korea will effectively import green ammonia, green hydrogen as a supplement or as a replacement for LNG in their energy mix as we go forward to sort of net zero commitments in the near future. So the project's very exciting, it's very large, and it's a great thing to be involved in.
Fantastic, thanks, Paul. So when we talk about ESG, environmental social governance, there's been a lot of emphasis recently on the environmental side. But Gavin, I'd like to talk to you now about the S and the G, the social and the governance. And it's a really interesting angle for this project. Could you talk us a little bit about that, please?
Sure, David, thanks. It's one of the great joys when you get to work on projects like this, that you get to sort of try to push the boundaries of how projects are interacting with the community at large. And what we're seeing with a lot of our renewables clients, and particularly with this Western Green Energy Hub, is how to not only appear, absolutely shiny green, the E in the ESG, but looking at the social and governance impacts. As Paul said, we're blessed with a lot of land, wind, and sun. Now, these projects are close to the sea and are also on land where our traditional owners of Australia, the native title parties, have determined native title. And so what this project wants to do is have a real embodiment of a relationship with the traditional owners to really maximise their involvement and in a fairly non-traditional way. I think most renewable projects are looking at traditional resources projects, which usually have been at the forefront of engagement with First Nations groups and tribal communities around the globe, and think, well, what can we do better? And there's a couple of steps that we're seeing in this. We're seeing not just that compliance with, say, local laws about managing cultural heritage impacts or agreements with traditional owners, but we're seeing these sort of multi-faceted consortia looking at international standards like IFC performance standards, the UN guiding principles, creative principles and the like, and thinking, if we want to actually be at the, over the horizon sort of projects, how are we going to engage with the communities that we're impacting with these projects. And so we're quite blessed with this particular client to be looking at some fairly innovative methodologies of equity participation, of board seats from the local traditional owners, the WA Mirning people, and then also looking to negotiate what we think will be one of the world's most innovative land use agreements with the traditional owners. And I think that's just one of those trends that we're seeing post things like the Juukan Gorge incident in WA, the importance that large projects are placing on the community expectations of how they engage with important stakeholders like traditional owners, tribal groups and the like around the world, and then how they actually invest in a meaningful relationship and not just in a lip service sort of way, but in a purely commercially driven and sensible way where those stakeholders are really treated as and embodied in whether it's joint venture arrangements, partnerships and the like. That to us, you can see that just driving absolute value in these sorts of projects. We're getting calls from partners, around our sort of global network to say, look, people in New York and London have heard about how this is happening and really want to understand how they can look to their jurisdictions where they're impacting on tribal groups and First Nations. So it's an amazing thing to see, and I think it'll be one of the first, and it'll set the trend.
That is absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much, Gavin. Paul, I'm going to finish with you now. Could you just provide a bit of context for this Western Green Energy Hub? How does it fit into the global wave of the energy transition that we're seeing?
Yeah, look, I think it's certainly part of that energy transition broader story or narrative that's sweeping the globe at the moment and picking up pace. But there are so many facets to it. And so if we look at what we're seeing and what all our clients are focused on, there are so many aspects of their business now that they're looking at through that lens of energy transition, future-proofing, that idea of where to next. And this is a great example. That idea that green transportable energy is a great way of unlocking the real potential to drive to a net zero outcome, in part because there are many countries of the world where there is not a perfect renewable energy solution to create baseload power, for example, or sufficient land available or wind resource or sun. And what this allows is a solution for those nations to go on that journey, and organisations that house their operations there. So it's an important part, but it's by no means the end of that particular story. I think we'll see a wave of these projects being developed around the world, and we've already seen a number starting to gather momentum, not just these two that we're working on. But I think it'll be part of a much broader storyline around what people's energy mix is, how they change their operations, what people invest in, what people are willing to fund. And I think to echo Gavin's point, the S and the G in ESG are also an important component of that. And that's the piece that I think is going to be really interesting going forward as well, is these sort of projects and developments are being viewed through a different lens that they might have been viewed a decade ago, certainly a decade ago. And that is just an interesting sign of the times that we live in. And it's only going gathering momentum. So I think it's going to be an increasingly important part of what we're seeing for the decade and beyond.
Gavin, Paul, it's been really fascinating to hear from you on this project. It sounds extremely interesting. I'm sure there's a lot of hard work for you guys ahead. Thanks very much for your time today.
Pleasure.
We'll be back next week with another video.